Hi, my name is Gabriella, and I'm a professional officer at the Energy and Water Agency. With us today we have Ms. Dinahlee Delceppo, professional in finance and sustainability at the Water Services Corporation. The first question is, what is water government's approach that you consider innovative in your surroundings?
When it comes to Water Services Corporation, back in 2023, we issued green bonds. They were the first of their kind in Malta. A total amount of 25 million was raised, and through this issuance, we are financing 5 different projects, which in each of their respective rights, they work towards environmental sustainability.
So, and to follow up on that question, what are the specific aspects of government's approach or tool which, according to you, make it innovative?
So, in this context, of course, there is the capital market world, which was always there and always existed, but through such financial instruments, such as the green bonds, we are linking that capital market to financial sustainability and environmental sustainability. So we're not just raising funds for any project, we're raising funds for projects which work towards environmental goals. And apart from that, through also certain requirements which are interlinked with such issuances of green bonds, you have to be more transparent and provide a certain amount of disclosures as to what you are doing with these funds and what you're financing.
Perfect. Are you familiar with the RETOUCH?
I wasn't the most familiar before this interview, but I'm a bit more familiar now, yes.
Basically, it's an approach that highlights the interdependence of water, energy, and food security and ecosystems. This includes water, soil, land, and that underpins that security. How do you consider the explicit consideration of the RETOUCH in the innovative approach or solution in the question?
So, as I mentioned before, through the issuance of these green bonds, we are financing 5 different projects. Mainly, these entail the new reverse osmosis plant at the Hondo Rimun in Gozo, the solar farms, the aeration system upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant in the south of Malta, upgrades pertaining to non-revenue water, and also to water network infrastructure. And through these several upgrades, of course, we are directly contributing to water efficiency, availability, and reliability in the Maltese islands. Apart from that, also through these projects, we are continuously working on, as much as possible, lowering our energy intensity. Naturally, it's unavoidable to a certain extent because it is required to be able to produce water to begin with. However, we are aware that, of course, it has its implications. So we are trying as much as possible as well, not only to use energy to produce water, but to do it in the most efficient way. Through those, the water and energy sort of characteristics are being tackled. Apart from that, I think it's also important to keep in mind that ensuring that there is water available will also contribute to food security as well. So I think that's also an important aspect of the Nexus.
That's important. So to build up on that question, how and why did the government's approach or tool emerge, and who took the initiative?
It was essentially an internal initiative, so it came internally from the corporation, of course, through as well its subsidiary Clearflow Plus, since Clearflow, the subsidiary, is the actual issuer of the bonds.
What is the level of application of the innovative approach or tool on a national level, local, or multiple?
So the issuance of the bonds was on a national scale, so it's listed on the Malta Stock Exchange, but of course through the several projects which we mentioned, we are targeting different areas around the islands.
Okay. And is the approach or tool implemented in other regions, like regional, local, as well?
Just locally, not really.
So now we're going to move on to the participation and inclusiveness section. What sectors are involved? Which ones are not? Basically water, energy, agriculture, environment, those types of sectors.
So mainly it would be the water sector, of course, because of the nature of the corporation itself. But as I mentioned, certain projects also work on energy efficiency. So indirectly we're also touching the energy sector. And as I mentioned as well, of course, it indirectly contributes to food security. So as well, that one. Apart from that, of course, we have other sectors which pertain to the financial instruments themselves. So we have the regulatory bodies, the financial intermediaries, banking institutions, which were all part and parcel of this whole situation, really and truly.
Exactly. How do you consider all relevant stakeholders to be involved? So who are the stakeholder groups and how are they being engaged?
So, as I mentioned, mainly when we were actually working towards the issue, the main stakeholders there were the regulatory bodies and other authorities, such as, for example, the Malta Financial Services Authority and the Malta Stock Exchange. We also were in conversation as well with the ministry and other related entities. And of course, one of the main key stakeholders in this case are the bondholders themselves, because they are enabling us to invest in these projects. So that would be mainly it.
Okay. And to what extent is the participation of these sectors equitable?
So basically, apart from the fact that they are helping us invest in these projects, first and foremost, on an annual basis, the green bonds require that you prepare an impact and allocation report. Basically, what this is that you are showing your investors and, to be honest, the general public, because it's available to anyone, really and truly, where the funds are being used, the progress that is being made, and other things which enable users of this report to understand better the situation. So through that, of course, you're providing the transparency required just even for the public to make sure that you're really using these funds for the things that you're saying that you're using them. Apart from that, we also went a bit of a step forward, and recently we launched as well a monitoring tool, which is also available not just for investors, but for the general public. And what this monitoring tool does, it's similar to what the impact and allocation report does, but it's updated more frequently. So it's updated on a regular basis. It's not just an annual sort of snapshot of the progress. So whoever wishes to track the progress being made and make sure that we're using the funds in an environmentally sustainable way, as promised, of course, can just go into this monitoring tool and track the progress in terms of the funds that are being dispersed, where the locations are of the project, and stuff like that.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the section, some issues that are in stake. Which milestone has this tool or approach achieved so far?
So basically, if we focus from a disbursement point of view, when I say disbursement, what I mean is how many of the original 25 million which were collected from the investors have been utilized so far. So from the end of 2023 till now, we have utilized 40% approximately of those 25 million, which is quite good considering that it's been slightly more than a year. There has been significant progress made across all 5 projects. The Hondo one, which I mentioned, was essentially ready because it was a refinancing project. However, the rest of them are progressing quite nicely. The solar farms have started being installed and commissioned. The aeration system is nearing completion as well, the aeration system upgrade at Tabarkat. And we have significant upgrades in both the non-revenue water projects and also the water network infrastructure one.
Okay. And now we'll move on to the main challenges. So what are the main challenges being addressed by this approach?
I think rather than challenge, it was a bit of a minor issue, so to speak, or not minor, but it was a present issue in the capital market sphere, so to say. Okay. So basically, access to finance is always there for you to access. However, even traditional forms of finance nowadays, they have started asking for certain sustainability-related metrics. So whether you're funding eligible green projects in this case, or whether you're funding normal projects which are not really sustainable, you still need to provide certain sustainability-related documents, so to say. Mm-hmm. However, through these financial instruments such as the green bonds, what you're doing is basically you're linking this like access to finance directly to sustainable projects. So the issue sort of that you're settling is that you're unlocking something new, which is ensuring that finance is being directed towards sustainable projects.
Now we're going to move on the decision-making process. So the first question is, how does this approach relate to and impact existing decision-making structures?
So, of course, there were already existing internal governance structures and decision-making processes at the corporation. However, because of the green bond issue, we had to move on to a public listing when it comes to its subsidiary. So Clearflow Plus, in this case, had to become a public company for the listing. that in itself, of course, entails certain requirements in terms of governance structures. For example, we had to establish an audit committee in this case. More specifically to the issuance itself as well, we also had to establish a sustainability committee internally. Basically, what the main purpose of the sustainability committee is to ensure that the funds are being used for the purpose listed in the prospectus, and also provide approval of the disbursement, which I mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Now we're going to move on to the future outlook. What are the plans for the future with this innovative government's approach tool?
So, of course, the green bonds enabled us already to invest in the 5 projects which I mentioned, which was a very good step forward as well in water management and sustainability. However, the corporation is continuously investing heavily in its infrastructure, and of course, we are always trying to seek to not only ensure to have financial resilience, but also do so in a sustainable way. So going forward, the plan, of course, is to keep utilizing such sustainable finance to ensure that water is not just being managed, but it's being managed sustainably.
Okay. Basically, to conclude this topic, reflecting back on the first question on innovative aspects of the approach or tool, do you have anything to add further to this?
So I think, as I mentioned before, these green bonds have enabled us, of course, to finance projects which, at the end of the day, are working towards the general good, the general public's good. And I think one important point as well that I would like to conclude with is that some people, I think, have this mindset that you're either going to work towards financial stability or going to work towards sustainability. But truth be told, they are reinforcing of each other, not otherwise. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind as well.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Dinahlee, for your availability and for your valuable information.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for watching. Follow us on YouTube on RETOUCH NEXUS.